Hi, everybody. This is Silvio Canto in Dallas, Texas, on Tuesday, June the 10th, and welcome to our commentary. I think we're going to get rain today. We were supposed to have that horrible storm on Sunday night. It did come. I guess it just didn't come over here as much as it did in other parts of the metroplex. But tonight, I guess we are going to get some rain just about everywhere. We always need rain in Texas, as I have said many times before. I have a post over at the American Thinker, and let's begin with that because my post is about LA, and it's called The Lost City. And by the way, I'm using the title of that movie, The Lost City, a movie that Andy Garcia, the Cuban American filmmaker, made about Cuba and Havana, and that being the lost city. So I'm saying the same thing about LA, the lost city, because in fact, that is what's happening in LA and in the whole state of California. The whole state of California is in slow collapse. They're not, I mean, I don't know if they're going to make it. They're going to have to figure out some way of making up these deficits. And of course, how are they going to get out of the fires that they had months ago? One of the problems that they are having is that the state is so bureaucratic. The bureaucracy in California works for the benefit of the bureaucrats, not for the benefit of the consumers or the people. So the whole state is a mess. And the latest example of all of this is how California has decided to defy immigration law, federal immigration law, when it comes to sanctuary cities. They say we're a sanctuary city and we're a sanctuary state. Now, under President Biden, they didn't have any problem because President Biden didn't challenge it. But it's different with President Trump. He's actually sending ICE into LA and doing these raids in LA. And that, of course, has created these riots and these protests and all that kind of stuff. But on this particular one, President Trump is correct. The city of LA or the state of California cannot decide which immigration law they're going to respect. They simply cannot do it. I mean, you just don't do. Imagine what kind of a mess we would have in the country if you had 50 states and each state decided which one of the many laws that we have, federal laws, applies or doesn't apply to them. I mean, just to think of the chaos that it would create. What if a state said, for example, we're not going to abide by the opinion of the Supreme Court regarding same-sex marriage because we don't believe in it. So we're not going to issue certificates or marriage certificates to same-sex couples, for example. Or what if a state said, well, we don't think Social Security or the Social Security law, we don't believe in it, and therefore we're not going to force businesses in our area, our jurisdiction or whatever, to charge people for Social Security or collect Social Security and then send it to the IRS. What if a state did that? Well, it would be chaotic, wouldn't it? It would be chaotic. Well, the same thing with immigration laws. The same thing with immigration laws. And that's the dilemma with California. They've decided to become a sanctuary state. And of course, LA and San Francisco and these other cities, sanctuary cities. And here's the problem. ICE has identified certain people who are living in LA who are criminals that they want to go after. They believe that these people have engaged in criminal behavior. There's even one case I heard of a business that was nothing but a cover for the cartels, that is for washing money or laundering money or whatever the word is, and they want to go after. Now, normally what you would have is the ICE would work with the local government to go after these people. And there wouldn't be much of an issue. Simply the local government would arrest these people, or the police would arrest them and then turn them over to ICE. That's the way it should be done. That's the way it's done just about every place. But California has decided that they're not going to do that. So the Trump administration said, yes, you are. And they sent ICE directly into LA, and they're going after people and they're going after businesses because they're looking for certain people. This is not about, picking up immigrants and arresting immigrants en masse. That's not what this is about. What this is about is targeting criminals engaged in criminal behavior in the information that ICE has. and they're going after these people. And unfortunately, the state of California is getting in the way. And this is going to lead, I think, to, well, it's already a confrontation between the federal government and the state government, a confrontation that the federal government will win, whether in the courts or just in practice. But what puzzles me more than anything else is why the governor of California, who's apparently planning to run for president in 2028, didn't just pick up on this and say to President Trump, hey, you're right. We need to fix this problem. And I don't have enough police officers to do it. So yeah, let's work together. Let's bring in the National Guard and we'll work together and we'll fix this problem and we'll go after criminal elements in our community. We'll get them out and everybody's happy. I'm surprised he didn't do that, given as the rumor goes that he wants to run for president. And now that kind of ties into the other issue for the Democrats, and that is that this whole question of immigration, this whole question of deporting people is working for President Trump, not for them. I just saw this poll at CNN, and there wasn't just one, but several polls they were citing, where this issue is killing Democrats. In fact, the fellow at CNN, the guy who does this polling data, he's kind of an entertaining fellow. I think you know who I'm talking about. I can't think of his name right now, but he's a very entertaining guy. And he basically said, and I think I'm quoting him pretty much directly or correctly, he said, the American people don't think the Democrats have a clue about immigration. And I think that's about right. That's about right. They simply do not believe that the Democrats understand the issue or want to do anything about it. In the meantime, you have these images on television of people flying different flags from other countries, burning cars, causing problems. Now you have the looting. I guess they had looting last night in one store. You know, this looting thing it's crazy. You know, I mean, why would people want to destroy a local business just because they're mad at Trump? Apparently, they went into a sushi business and destroyed it. And it turns out that the owners of the business are local people, mom and pop operation there. And, you know, this is the same thing that happened in Minneapolis and Seattle, you know, a few years ago when we had those riots then, that the businesses that they are destroying end up being minority-owned businesses in those communities who generate taxes and, of course, generate jobs. But anyway, so where is this going to go? I'm not exactly sure, but Trump is winning. Trump is winning this whole debate. And if you think of what happened over the weekend and the National Guard and attacking ICE agents and all of that, this was a huge victory for President Trump. The Democrats basically gave him an early Christmas present. And now he can run with this, and he's doing it. And the American people are looking at the Democrat Party, again, based on that polling information that I just shared with you, that there's a video of this. It's fascinating, where the guy says, the American people don't think that the Democrats have a clue of what to do with immigration. And the reality is that they don't. They don't have a clue. And it would be so much smarter for Governor Newsom and for the Democrats if they would simply say, hey, let's work together to get the criminals out. And let's just do that. That would make a lot of sense. But apparently they've decided they've decided not to do that. And it's not easy. It's not smart. Politically, it's not smart whatsoever for the Democrats to take this posture. It's not smart for them to take this posture that they've taken with respect to immigration. I've got a post coming out tomorrow, that would be Wednesday, where I'm talking about the president of Mexico. The president of Mexico made a statement in the last 24 hours or 48 hours. Now, she was angry at the fact that the United States is considering a tax or a fee on remittances. This is the money that people send to Mexico. In the case of Mexico, depending on what number you want to use, the remittances, or in Spanish, remesas, they are anywhere from 3 to 5% of the Mexican GDP. That's a lot of money. That is a lot of money. 3% of your GDP is a lot of money. 5% would be a horrendous amount of money, but it's somewhere between 3 and 5%. It depends again on what numbers you want to calculate. And she was angry about it. So she said, pretty much verbatim, we have to mobilize. And what she was talking about was mobilizing Mexicans in the United States to contact members of Congress or whatever to see if they could put an end to this, because this particular tax or fee on remittances is part of the bill right now in the Senate. It passed the House and it's now in the Senate. Well, unfortunately for President Sheinbaum, the next day or so, you had the problems in LA. And then all of a sudden, here she is calling on people to mobilize, and you have the problem in LA. Now, to be fair, I'm just trying to be fair. I'm sure she wasn't talking about the LA problem when she was talking about mobilize. But, politics is not supposed to be fair. And I think all of us know as well as anybody that you can very easily say something that gets misunderstood. So she's having a little bit of a problem. Now, she did go on television, I guess, today. She has this daily press conference. And she said, well, no, we don't support people using violence, and we don't want people to do that. And she called on Mexicans in the United States to behave well and all that kind of stuff. The problem is that the video out there of having her say mobilize has obviously, gone around. And as I said before, in politics, sometimes politics can be very unfair. And something you say here will come back to haunt you here. So I don't know what happened. I don't know why all of a sudden she said mobilize. And then, of course, she had to take it back, not directly, but clearly in the next message. So I don't know if somebody whispered in her ear and said, hey, you got to take this back, or you said something stupid. I have no idea. But it's become a real embarrassment. And today, when President Trump was in the Oval Office taking some questions, the Secretary of Homeland Security actually brought this up and accused the president of Mexico directly that she was calling on Mexicans to mobilize in the United States. Again, I don't think she was with respect to what's happening in LA, but her timing, meaning the timing of the president of Mexico, could not have been worse, using mobilize at a time or right before you have this situation in LA. So it could be a little bit of a diplomatic mess. Let's just say this, not a good idea for the president of a country to get involved in the affairs of another country. Not a good idea. And I think President Sheinbaum is learning that lesson. Quick on this day in history, 1944. Now, very important that we understand what was happening in 1944 at this time. June 10th was 4 days after D-Day, and the entire country, of course, was caught up in the D-Day situation. And, at the time, U.S. troops and Allied troops were moving into France, but still, it was a very dangerous situation. And over on the baseball diamond, they didn't have enough players because so many guys, so many men were in the war. So a lot of older players were playing, and some Latin American players were playing. And a 15-year-old put on the uniform and actually pitched in the major leagues, becoming the youngest guy ever to pitch in the major leagues. His name was Joe Nuxall. And he started the game for the Cincinnati Reds. I think he pitched like 4 or 5 innings, came out of the game. Then they sent him down to the minor leagues, and we didn't see him again for a few years later. Joe Nuxall then did come back a few years later to the majors and had a decent major league career, and then became the announcer for the Cincinnati Reds games for many years. But on this day in 1944, when he was only 15, he was starting a game for the Cincinnati Reds, becoming the youngest man ever to pitch, or I think even play, in the major leagues. Joe Nuxall, quite a baseball story on this day in 1944. Thank you for listening. This is Silvio Canto in Dallas, and we'll talk to you later. Bye-bye, everybody.